Welcome back to A Word Before We Leave. My name is Brett Gaffney. Coming from Los Angeles, California, today we have Isabella Andreoni. Isabella, would you care to introduce yourself to the cameras before we dive in?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Isabella Andreoni. I was born in Guatemala, grew up in Rhode Island, currently live here in Los Angeles, and excited to be here today.
Isabella, you're doing a big thing right now, and you're fundraising for Mayan Village in Guatemala, and I wanted to give you an opportunity at the start and at the end to share that with the people that are essentially like viewing the episode or listening to the episode. So if you want to just pause and just talk about that real quick.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then we'll do the interview.
Okay. Yeah. So I was born in Guatemala, but was adopted as a baby when I was 6 months old, and have been reconnecting with my roots a lot over the last 5 years or so. And through that journey, I have become super passionate about giving back to my people, giving back to my homeland. I realize I live such a life of privilege because my parents chose to adopt me when I was a baby, and I want to be able to give back to my people. So this year will be the second year I host a Christmas fundraiser for a rural village in Guatemala. Last year, I raised almost $6,000, so I had the same goal this year, and I currently have reached the goal. However, I am still collecting donations for this Christmas celebration up until December 20th, so if anyone listening wants to contribute, it would mean the absolute world.
Can you paint a picture for what this Christmas celebration would look like for this Mayan village?
Yeah, definitely. Essentially, it's just a day of celebration. Last year, we hired a clown to come in and do like 2 hours of entertainment. We had tamales for everyone, horchata. We did gift giveaways, prizes, school backpacks filled with school supplies, like essential goods for the elderly individuals in the community. And it's really just a way for everyone to come together and have a moment of happiness where, you know, these individuals in this village, I feel like, are constantly living in survival mode, and all I really want to be able to give them is moments of happiness throughout the day and a place for them to kind of escape to and just take their minds off things, especially since it's the holiday season.
The US dollar goes a lot farther in Guatemala, if that's correct, right?
Yes, very correct. So I always tell everyone, no matter what your contribution is, $1 to $100, it literally makes such a difference, and every dollar adds up.
And these kids don't get celebrations like this often, correct?
Yep. Especially because the village is so remote. It's about 6 hours north of the capital. And even when you get to the nearest town, it's then another 45 minutes to the village. And it's actually in the center of a super like high trafficked area for tourists. But the communities around this area are still super underserved. So it's just a way for me to be able to give back to a community that really would not have this opportunity elsewise.
And how can they access this fundraiser?
Yes. So if you go to my Instagram at i.andreoni, there's a link in my bio that you can click, and it basically just leads you to my Venmo.
And also in the description of the podcast, I will link to the fundraiser as well as her Instagram. So if you guys are viewing it on YouTube or on Spotify right now, this is like a perfect opportunity to like get involved and be a part of something bigger than yourself outside of the show, which is ideally why we do it. But now let's get to the show. We always start the show with a fun little thing I like to call Word of the Day. Word of the Day is brought to you by Merriam-Webster's Dictionary. Not sponsored. One day it will be. We always be saying that. And today's Word of the Day is galvanize. Galvanize. Galvanize is what it means is to galvanize people is to cause them to be so excited or concerned about something that they are driven to action. And their example sentence is, the council's proposal to close the library has galvanized the town's residents. Now, Isabella, you're going to come up with an example sentence using the word galvanize, and then I'll come up with a sentence, and then that's Word of the Day.
Okay. Can you repeat the definition again?
Yeah, of course. Okay, to galvanize people is to cause them to be so excited or concerned about something they are driven to action.
Okay. Isabella's podcast episode with Brett galvanized the listeners to donate to her Christmas in Guatemala fundraiser.
I had a feeling it was going to be related to that. I kind of said, I was giving you a fly ball so you could hit it. That's a home run right there. a word before we leave. The podcast you're watching and listening to now galvanizes you to be a better version of yourself through other people's stories.
Love that.
And that's word of the day. Now we can dive directly into the actual questions. Isabella, what gets you out of bed every single day?
Oof, every single day. I'll start by answering with the action that I do every day, and then I guess
you don't want to talk about your new alarm clock?
I could spend an hour talking about the Hatch alarm clock.
We don't even have an hour.
Yeah, I mean, my alarm goes off every morning, and someone else asked me this question recently, and I didn't realize I did this until I was like, what do I do before I get out of bed? But essentially, my alarm clock goes off every morning, and I lay in bed. I turn off my alarm clock. I lay in bed and kind of just collect my thoughts for a second instead of actually getting out of bed. I lay there, and I say to myself, all right, let's get this.
Let's get this. Gotta get up right now.
And I kind of I realized I wanted to take a minute to collect my thoughts before truly starting my day every day, because I think it's really easy for you to get caught up in your list of what do I have to do today? Especially we all work, we all have these checklists running through our mind constantly. And I think it's really easy for those lists to kind of stress you out at the beginning of your day.
Sure.
So it's just a minute for me to collect my thoughts and be all right, kind of pump myself up. Let's get this, let's go. And of course there will be things that happen throughout my day that maybe change my mood a little bit, but I never want to get out of bed angry, or I never want to get out of bed stressed out, if that makes sense.
Have you had days where you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? What does that look like?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that's why I take a minute and I say to myself, all right, let's get this, because it mind checks me.
Sure.
And it just grounds me and helps me think about, it's such a privilege to wake up. We all go to sleep every night, but we don't all wake up the next day. And so it kind of just puts me back in that mindset of, it's a good day to have a good day. Let's get it.
It's a good day to have a good day. That's a really good quote, genuinely. Isabella, I wanted to start, I kind of segment the show past, present, future. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start in 1998, Guatemala. Let's talk about your birth and adoption, if you're open to it.
Yeah.
And I want to explore kind of what has become the family dynamic. I know your dad is a avid traveler. Mm-hmm. Seems like he's been all across Europe. I believe your mom's similar in that same regard.
Yep.
And you are also an avid traveler. You've been to, how many continents have you been to at this point?
Oh, continents, 4 countries, 23 maybe.
Yeah, that's more than most people.
Yeah.
So you're fortunate to experience that.
Totally.
So I feel like your lens on what the world is has got to be extremely unique and also culturally diverse.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your parents.
Okay. My favorite topic.
Let's do it.
I always, there's not a single day that goes by where I don't think about how grateful I am for my mom and dad. In 1990, I was born March 13th, 1998 in Coatepeque, Guatemala, which is kind of near the border of Mexico. My biological mom was, I believe, 19 when she had me, and couldn't afford to support a child. So she decided to put me up for adoption. And the day I was born, I was placed into the foster care system and was under the care of a beautiful, amazing family for 6 months, for the first 6 months of my life before my now parents entered my life. And they took care of me as if I was their own daughter. And I didn't know this until recently that my foster family actually tried to adopt me, but my mom had already filed the papers for my adoption.
Wow.
And so, which is just so crazy because there's so many things in my life where my life could have played out in so many different ways for so many different reasons. And I'm just so grateful that, I landed with the family that I have, and, it's put me on this life trajectory that I could have never imagined for myself. And so a few years ago in 2018, that's when I kind of started becoming super curious about my background. And I went back to Guatemala with my best friend that I met at Loyola Marymount University. And she really opened up my eyes to my culture because it was something I ignored for so long. My parents were always, since the day I was adopted, were always so supportive of me going back and exploring my roots. But until I was in college, it just wasn't really anything I prioritized. And like I said, I met my best friend, went back to Guatemala for the first time with her. And since then, it's just been such a roller coaster of continuing to go back, continuing to explore my roots even more. I've now done a trip with my parents to Guatemala. And yeah.
So you grew up in Rhode Island after being adopted by your parents in Guatemala. And I don't know exactly what the time frame was, but how long were you in Rhode Island, and when did you decide to come to California for college?
Yeah, so I grew up, since I was adopted until I went to college, I lived in Rhode Island.
Sure.
My whole family lives out there, and I moved out here I transferred to Loyola Marymount my sophomore year, so in 2017, and I've been in LA since. And
you don't want to leave?
No. I thought I did for a hot minute a few years ago, but I think growing up in Rhode Island, I always say I have been so blessed to have had such a positive adoption experience, and I've met a lot of other Guatemalan adoptees in person and both online that they don't share that same positive experience. You never know, the family that you're being adopted into. And so I always say I'm super blessed to have had such a positive experience with adoption. But growing up in Rhode Island, it definitely is not as diverse of a state as California is.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think I realized how much I was craving that diversity until I moved out here for college. And, it's Los Angeles as a city is such a melting pot. And I think it's so beautiful. And so growing up, I now reflect on my childhood, and there are definitely moments where I was missing certain pieces, being surrounded by other people that looked like me, which I didn't look at it as a negative thing in the moment, but looking back, I'm like, okay, I'm really grateful that I have that in my life now.
Was there an age where you felt like you were really starting to connect with these ideas, that you wanted to connect with your roots? And what was that age? If there's a story that you'd want to share from that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. My cousin, when I was home for Thanksgiving, said to me recently, because we were talking about this, how growing up, I really had no interest in anything with Guatemala, with exploring my roots. But she heard that it takes about 7 exposures to something for it to really stick and pique your interest. And I don't know where that quote's from. I don't know if that's
my mind.
Totally true.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
7 exposures.
7 exposures. And when she said that to me, I think back to all the different exposures I had in my life growing up. And I would say there was probably 7 exposures that came to mind. And the 7th one was the biggest
Sure.
one. I don't know if it was actually number 7, but ballpark it was.
Yeah, you're claiming it as the 7th.
I'm claiming it as the 7th exposure. Was that, like I was just saying, on my very first day of classes at LMU, I was in one of my communication studies classes, and we were doing, the typical icebreakers, like what's your fun fact or whatever. And everyone went around the room. I don't even remember what I said, but I had already gone. And we got to the last person, and this girl, Amada, had said, my fun fact is that I was born and raised in Guatemala. And after class, I went up to her, introduced myself, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was her excitement, the way she said it so proud and loud. Yes, I'm born and raised in Guatemala, that it made me excited. And so I introduced myself to her, and we just clicked right away. And we just started hanging out. And a few months later, she invited me to go back for the holidays with her, which would have been my first time going back since my adoption. And when she asked me, there was just no shadow of doubt. Yes, I want to go.
Yeah.
And we made it happen. And the rest is history, basically.
Yeah. I want to keep diving into this, but I think it's a perfect time for us to do a segment called Wordplay. This is a game I play with every single guest on the show. It's like honestly one of my favorite parts about doing the podcast. So the rules are simple. I'm going to count us down from 3.
Okay.
And then our goal is to say the first word that comes to our mind. And our goal is to get to the same word.
Okay.
The rules are you can't say anything that's around us. We can't say anything that we see, nothing in the room. We're not really in a room, so nothing behind us either. Don't repeat any words we've already said, and try your best to avoid names. It's easier said than done. Sometimes if it's obvious, it's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm going to start thinking of a word, and then when you're ready, we're going to get into it.
Okay.
I got a word.
Okay.
Do you got a word?
Yep, I got a word.
3, 2, 1. Trolley.
Okay, not bad. That was pretty good.
Okay.
That was pretty good.
Trolley and plane.
Yep. Okay.
I got a word.
I got a word.
3, 2, 1.
Seat?
Vehicle. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Vehicle and seat. I got a word.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Seatbelt.
Car. Oh, okay. We're on to something. Car and seatbelt. I got a word.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Tire.
Wheel.
That's the same thing.
No,
Come on,
it
that
has
counts.
to be the same word though. It doesn't count. It's close
Okay,
though. We're close.
okay.
Wheel and tire.
Oh
God, I could really throw this off for us.
Same.
I got a word.
Wait, I don't have a word
First
yet.
word that comes to mind.
Wheel and tire.
Wheel and tire. Think about it.
Okay. I'm going there. I don't know if it's the same place.
I'm going there too. 3, 2, 1.
Nail.
Circle. Oh gosh.
You know, like a nail in the tire.
Yeah. Circle and nail. I got a word.
Circle and nail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sending it to you with my mind.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Wall.
Screw. Wait, no, this is screw and wall.
Okay. I've got a word.
I got a word. 3, 2, 1.
Painting.
Drill. Drill and painting. You know, sometimes these games go on for a little bit.
I was gonna say. Okay.
Drill.
Wait, drill and painting.
Yeah, drill and painting.
Ooh. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Canvas.
Hanging. Hanging and canvas. I got a word.
Wait, we can't repeat words, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Hanging and canvas.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Picture.
Frame.
Wait, this is actually driving me crazy because we've had it almost
we're
like multiple
adjacent.
times.
We're adjacent. Frame and picture. Yeah, I got a word. Just think of this round. Just think frame and picture.
Frame and picture.
Frame.
I don't know any
and
other words.
Picture. Yes, you do. You got this.
My vocabulary is limited. Frame and picture. Okay. Wait.
Frame and picture.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Photograph.
Photo.
Same thing. Okay, that's the same thing. Come on, that's the same
I
thing.
can't take it. It has to be the exact same word. Photo and photograph.
Okay, we've got it.
3,
We've got it.
2, 1.
Camera.
Yes. Come on, give me some.
Yes. Oh my gosh, wait. That was actually so funny.
So that was wordplay. It ended on camera, which is what is recording this podcast if you're watching video.
Yes.
Back to the questions.
Okay.
Isabella,
Yes.
I want to talk about your initial big trip to Guatemala, specifically about your relationship. Your boyfriend is long distance.
Yep.
And he was your tour guide.
Yes. Crazy.
And he was telling you about his experience as being a Mayan and what his experience in Guatemala is like.
Yep.
And there was a language barrier a little bit?
He speaks English, but
okay.
a little bit.
What was that experience like? How did you come to fall in love with him?
Yeah. So I guess to paint the full picture, in 2022, I had decided to quit my job on a whim. No plan.
What was the job?
I was working at a nonprofit and I was doing fundraising operations, got very stressful, decided to step away and started traveling. And I realized I had never done a solo trip. And I've heard great things about, your eat, pray, love moment. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to push myself to do it.
Like it's happening.
It's happening. But I wanted to be, a little strategic in choosing where I went, just because I was a young female solo traveler. So I decided to go somewhere I had already been to. And naturally, Guatemala came to mind. I had only been one other time since my adoption, and I didn't really get to explore all of the areas I wanted to see. So I was like, okay, I'm doing my solo trip to Guatemala for 2 weeks. I'm going to all these different places. I had it mapped out. And a few days into the trip, I went to an area 6 hours north of the capital called Champe. And it's this beautiful tide pools that are formed over a river. Like, you need to see photos to even slightly do it justice. I can't really explain it. But I was on a bus for 6 hours, stayed at a hostel. The next day after I got there, I went on the Champe tour, and lo and behold, my now boyfriend was my tour guide that day. And, as the day went on, we just had so many great conversations. And from the start, I think the thing that struck me the most was that when he realized I didn't speak Spanish, he didn't pass any judgment on me. He really took the time to come to understand, how is it that this girl who was born in Guatemala, who looks so Guatemalan, does not speak Spanish. He just came to know my story and asked really, meaningful and intentional questions that no one else had really ever taken the time to approach it that way. Usually, most of the time, people just pass judgment on me or make assumptions. But I think we connected over that very quickly. And as time went on, he just showed me so many beautiful things about our culture, about his culture, because he is Mayan, and that's just very different than just being Guatemalan. It adds a whole other layer. And I took the time to understand, what makes us similar and what makes us different. And it just brought us so close in such a short amount of time. And I think it really helped fill a big missing part of my identity that I didn't even know was there.
What was that missing part of your identity?
I think the deep sense of pride he has in being not only Guatemalan, but also Mayan. And he understands, Guatemala is such a beautiful country, but at the same time, there's a lot of injustices done to its people. The government doesn't really prioritize the care of its people, especially the Mayan population, the indigenous peoples of the country. And given that he is part of that community, he's really taken it upon himself to give back to his people. And that just matches my values and characteristics so perfectly. And so to find someone who is kind of on the same wavelength as me, in terms of giving back, in terms of, just trying to create good in this world, was something that I didn't think I would ever find in a partner.
How does long distance affect you on the day-to-day?
Yeah, it's difficult. I always say long distance is not for the weak. But when you find the right person, it's kind of that saying of when you know, you know. And it takes a lot of trust and communication and honesty with each other. And just, having faith that things will work out the way they're meant to be.
Do you guys have a communication pattern or a schedule that you guys check in on each other?
Not we never sat down and said okay, we're going to check in with each other at this time and whatnot, but it kind of just naturally fell into place that we always call each other before work in the morning. And we always call each other before bed, and we're not, texting 24/7 throughout the day. Sure. I think we really value those phone calls to start our day and to end our day.
Yeah, it's you guys have your two individual lives, mm-hmm. and then when you get the chance to share that with each other, it's actually a breath of fresh air.
Exactly.
What would you say to somebody who might be in a long distance relationship that might be struggling with it?
Yeah. I think, and this is so much easier said than done, but not to overthink the timeline of the long distance, because I think that's what I got caught up in at the beginning, which really put a lot of stress on our relationship in terms of like our next steps to eventually not be long distance one day. But, given the whole visa situation, it's really difficult, and there's not immediate steps that can be, it doesn't happen overnight. Like the long distance is not going to end overnight. And I think I'm someone that likes to see, things to happen immediately. And in this relationship, that is just not the case. Patience is a virtue. And so I would just always try and remind people, don't sweat the small things. And it kind of goes back to like, if it's meant to be, it'll be.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Taking it day by day.
Yeah, absolutely. What is something that you like to do for yourself in the present day that is a reward? What's something you do to treat yourself?
Kind of goes back to travel, honestly. I think like work hard, play hard. And I do consider myself a very hard worker. And I'm always willing to go above and beyond for whatever the task is. And so for me, something that's really grounding and that kind of gives me, mental space and mental clarity is always having my next adventure planned. It doesn't need to be this big, grand, crazy trip, but even something like a little weekend getaway or a trip to Laguna, an hour south, like something that just allows me to reconnect with the earth in a way, is super grounding.
Do you have a travel routine?
No, I would say as type A as I can be sometimes. I think when I'm traveling, that is when I'm most spontaneous. I like to have a list of things where, okay, I for sure want to see this, but how I get to see it, when I get to see it is up in the air.
So what's one place that you haven't been to that you want to go to?
I really want to go on an African safari. Specifically, I would also love to go to Uganda.
That sounds awesome.
No, and that's like,
that sounds awesome.
That is a huge trip that, a few years down the road, I hope it's possible.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You put it out there. Put it out in the world. It's going to happen.
Gotta manifest it for sure. But there's just so many corners of the world that are just on the top of my list, and slowly checking things off for sure.
Now, do you ever talk with your parents about your travel experiences? Do you guys like share kind of a bond through that love for travel?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think travel is one of the things that brings us closest. My dad traveled a lot probably in his 20s, I would say. My mom also traveled a lot growing up, but now they travel the most together. They plan so many trips throughout the year. And growing up, we did a lot of different family trips, and that's totally where I got my love for travel from, is from the two of them. It just came so naturally to me. And now that I'm older, we don't do as many family trips together. Like our schedules don't align as much as they used to, but we definitely still make it happen from time to time. But they're just so immensely supportive of me going out and doing my travels independently. And we're always sending each other photos. And once I get back from a trip, when they get back from a trip, we always make sure like to give the highlights and to go over everything that we experienced.
What is one of the wildest stories that you've had from traveling?
Goes back to Guatemala, of course.
Sure, of course. Why not?
In Guatemala, there is an overnight volcano hike that you can do. You hike an active volcano, like it's erupting every 20 to 30 minutes.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's called Acatenango for anyone listening. And if you have an interest in going to Guatemala, like this literally has to be on the top of your list. If you go and do not do this hike, I am fully judging you.
You're missing out. You're missing out. You hear that, guys?
And essentially you spend like 5 hours hiking to base camp, which I think is 10,000 feet.
That's a hike.
Yeah, it's a hike.
That's a real hike.
And you sleep at base camp, and then the next morning they wake you up and you summit the volcano. And that volcano, Acatenango, is inactive. But in the midst of all of this, in between, once you get to base camp, you have the option to hike another 3-hour round trip.
You said let's do it.
To the active volcano.
Yep,
and obviously I said, all right, let's get it.
Yeah.
And anyone of all levels can do it. The tour guides are just so amazing. And yeah, no matter what your, athletic ability is, you can do it. It's a mind game.
What's the mindset going into a hike like that?
One foot in front of another, like one step at a time, for sure. And slow and steady wins the race. Like it's more of a mind game than it is a physical one, I think.
Has that served you well outside of the hike itself?
Yeah, my I don't have my phone next to me, but my screensaver is a picture of the volcano like erupting, and I keep it as my screensaver. It's been like that since 2022 when I did the hike. And it just serves as a reminder of like, I can do hard things.
You absolutely can.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that feels like they can't do hard things?
Push yourself to do it, even if you think you can't. The greatest, I forget who said this, but it's a quote. I'm quoting someone else. The greatest things in life are right on the other side of your biggest fears. And you just got to push yourself to do it, and you'll never know what you can get out of it.
Has there been something that you've been wanting to push yourself to do that you might not have done yet?
Yes. To learn Spanish, to speak it fluently.
You know a little bit, right?
I know a little bit. I definitely know a lot more than I did 2 years ago. My boyfriend, his first language was actually not even Spanish. It's Quechua, which is one of the Mayan languages. And then, of course, he learned Spanish. And so being with someone who is a Spanish speaker has definitely helped. Mm-hmm. We mainly converse in English, but he does push me to practice. And last year, almost exactly 1 year ago, I started online Spanish lessons with a teacher who lives in Antigua, Guatemala.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. So it helps.
It's convenient.
It's convenient. Yeah. It helps. But speaking a language comes down to, I think it's like a confidence thing. And I think I do tend to lack confidence when it comes to speaking Spanish.
Sure. So
it's like this mind block that I have. But I think once I can get past the confidence thing, then I'll really start to excel at it.
There's this like concept when it comes to learning new skills or languages or musical instruments, and it's like the wall. So essentially, I'm going to use juggling as an example because I feel like juggling is like a good way to like paint this picture. When you're first starting to learn how to juggle, they start you just with the two balls. Your goal is just to throw a ball, catch a ball, throw the other ball, catch the ball. And your goal is to make little X's in the air. So then you want to 1, 2. It's kind of a countdown. Finally, once you're good with doing the 1, 2 and you throw, catch, because it's the rhythm to it, then they introduce the third ball. That's when it gets really hard because that's when the wall's introduced. The wall is essentially the lack of confidence in being able to let go of that third ball. When it comes to learning a new skill, whether that's a language or doing a new hobby or expertise, there's going to become a wall. Learning Spanish, there's probably a wall. You have your foundation, your fundamentals, your basics, but at some point, you're going to have to be able to know how to trust yourself to let go of that third ball and catch it. And the magic when it comes to the whole metaphor is that you're probably not going to catch that third ball, but it's not about catching it. It's about trying to let it go. And then eventually, if you do it enough, you'll get better and better and better at it, and then you'll start to realize that wall way far behind you. You got over it a long time ago. You just didn't even know it.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much, and I've never heard that.
I went to theater school. We get crazy metaphors like juggling all the time.
I love that so much. And it's funny because, like, the explanation I always give is, like, I feel like I have that wall that I just can't get past. But I'm going to remind myself of that. If jugglers can get past the wall, then I can get past the wall. And
the wall's used in a lot of other metaphors. Yeah. The wall's used when it comes to running. The wall's used when it comes like an artist creating a piece of work or writing. You know, you get writer's block. That's essentially the same thing as the wall, right? And the people that get past the wall end up accomplishing more than they wanted to achieve. And the people that don't get past the wall quit. It's just like there's only two options. You can do it or you don't.
Yeah.
The wall is the test.
Definitely at the wall right now with my language skills.
And you can get over it, I promise. If you can get over the wall in other parts of your life, there's nothing stopping you, I promise.
Totally.
It's just like a mental barrier that you have to overcome.
Right.
Are you ready for another segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. This is going to be word definition. I'm going to say one word, and then you're going to define it in your own words. Okay. I'm going to give you like 6 to 7 words.
Okay.
The first word is family.
Everything. Is it a one-word response?
You can
or
say as much as you want.
Yeah, I mean, to me personally, the definition is like family is absolutely everything in my life. I quite literally would not be here without my mom and dad choosing to love the daughter of another woman. as their own. And so family is everything.
Guatemala.
My happy place. I always joke, like, when in doubt, a trip to Guatemala can fix anything. I think it's just the place where I feel most grounded, and the place where I truly, truly feel most myself.
Community.
Community is also, I wouldn't be able to function without the community I have created in both here in LA, in Rhode Island, in Guatemala. And I think community has turned many places into a home for me.
Love.
That's I think there's just so many different things that come to my mind when you just mention one single word, love. But love to me is people. I think people, or love has manifested in different people in my life. And I always say you can't help but love someone once you know their story. And I think that's the beauty of really taking the time to make meaningful connections with people, is you end up loving them.
Perspective.
There's always a different way to view something. And I'll leave it at that.
Yes, I agree. I'm going to give you one more.
Okay.
Travel.
Expanding, a way to expand your mind and heart.
And that was word definition. Now we're going to move into the final questions. These tend to be a bit more broad, universal. Mm-hmm. They can get heavy. The goal is not to make them heavy. They just sometimes feel heavy on people.
Yep.
Isabella, what would you say to the person that is struggling right now?
Struggling right now, I would say to keep an open mind and to keep an open heart to all of the people and opportunities that present themselves to you, because you never know how a situation or a single person can affect your life in positive ways. But I think it's being open to meeting new people, being open to trying new things, and it kind of goes back to like helping with your perspective and may help you out of the rut a little bit.
If it's, this is a hypothetical, let's say it's 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to be in a physical location? Who do you want to be there? What are you guys doing?
That's a hard one for me to answer, because my dad always says to me, Isabella, you can't do it all. If I could be in 3 places at one time, I would be, because I think the thing with traveling, it ends up, like I was saying, home. My sense of home is built in so many different areas because I've lived in California for almost 10 years. So this is very much my home base. But at the same time, my immediate family, my friends I grew up with are in Rhode Island. Yeah. So that's also my home. Yeah. Like I was saying, I'm most myself and the happiest version of myself in Guatemala. My boyfriend lives in Guatemala. There's so many friends and extended family who live there that I love so much. So that's also my home. So I don't know. Like that question's really hard for me to answer, because in 5 years, if I could be living close to my parents as they get older, that is something I want for myself. If I could be living in Los Angeles in 5 years, continuing to, grow my career, one that I'm really happy with right now, I would want to be doing that. If I could be living in Guatemala with my boyfriend, having my own nonprofit in 5 years, I would want to be doing that. So I don't know.
I don't think when I ask that question, the goal is not to actually have I think the goal is just to help you understand there is multiple possibilities.
For sure.
Life happens.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it happens outside of our control. And I think like even just being able to paint a picture now allows you to be like, what do I really want to move towards?
Yeah.
Because I can't have all of them. You're right.
Right.
But I can choose one of them.
Right. And I think like the examples or the situations I kind of just mapped out for you, like those are 3 different ones, and I would be happy
in all of them.
Yeah. And I think in a way, I know one of them will eventually happen. And like I said, I would be content finding myself in any one of those 3 places with the people that I mentioned and whatnot.
They all sound great. They sound they like every time you said one of those, I was like, wow, I didn't even consider that. I was like, I could be in a different spot in 5 years.
Yeah.
Isabella, what's your relationship with the passage of time?
The passage of time. I feel like it's kind of a hard one because I never feel like I have enough time to do anything. Whether it's my 9 to 5 o'clock rolls around, I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have 10 things I needed to do, but time passes so quickly. When I'm traveling and I'm on a trip, it's like the last day of my trip, I'm like, I have to go home? Like, that's it? Time with my family, it's just never enough. Time in a long distance relationship, time with my boyfriend, it's never enough. So I think it is one that I struggle with, and it sometimes makes it a little difficult for me to feel truly present, like where my feet are at that moment, because in the back of my mind, I always know, okay, I only have so much time here. I only have 2 days left. I only have 1 day left.
We only have a few minutes left of the podcast.
I know, like what the heck?
One of my favorite exercises, I've actually done this with Lizzie a few times. Mutual friend, also alumni of the podcast, Lizzie Bromley and Emily Shakai are both friends with Isabella. And thanks to Lizzie specifically, I've been introduced to Isabella to actually do this interview. But there's a thing I like to do when I'm hanging out with Lizzie. If I feel like one of us is kind of getting off track, kind of like getting stuck in like a headspace, I'm like, hey, Lizzie, look at your hand right now. She looks at her hand. And then I say, Lizzie, what's your favorite color? And then she says green. And then I'm like, all right, Lizzie, what did we have for lunch? And she's like, we just had Raising Cane's chicken. I was like, yeah. I was like, what does the grass feel like below us as we're sitting on this, like on the grass? And she's like, feels like grass. And I'm like, great, you're back in the present moment. Yeah. Welcome to it. Now we're out of that headspace, and now we can like actually enjoy this moment that we're living right now. And I've introduced that to a lot of other people as well. And I think it's great to like remind us exactly what you said. Like, this isn't permanent. Every single moment is brand new, and it's fleeting at the same time. Isabella, if you could ask a word of advice from 80-year-old you, what do you think she would say? 80-year-old. She's lived a whole life. What do you think she would say, and what do you want her to say? What do you think she'd actually say?
I would want her to say, or I would hope 80-year-old me would bring it back to just remaining most true to yourself, and not caring too much about what other people think. I think that's something I really struggle with, like 26-year-old me. And I hope I get to a place where, that's not the case. I think 80-year-old me would say, don't take life too seriously. Maybe along those lines.
That's a common theme I've had people answer for that question specifically. I ask a lot of people that question, but a lot of people are like, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
If you could offer advice to 8-year-old you, what would you say?
Oh, 8-year-old me? I would say just be kind to yourself, which I feel like maybe that's a common response, but we're our biggest judgment. Like, we're so hard on ourselves. And I've seen, I think it was maybe a social media trend where people started keeping photos of like their 8-year-old self on their mirror. And I did do that for a while. When I moved, that came off the mirror, and I need to put it back up because it is such a good reminder. Like, every day when you look at yourself in the mirror and you see that photo of yourself, it's like, why are you so hard on yourself? Just, it's okay that you don't know everything. It's okay that you make mistakes. Not everyone's perfect. And I think we just get so caught up in the things that don't matter and overlook the things that do. And so it's just a good reminder to have.
Isabella, if there was somebody that you wanted to see right now, you don't have to specify who it is. If they were like, let's say behind the camera, watching the interview, what would you say to them? And just what would you say to them?
I'm trying not to get emotional when I say this. I've been thinking a lot about my grandparents. I have, on my mom's side, my grandfather is still alive. On my dad's side, my grandmother is still alive. And I have been thinking a lot about them because I think of, like, how is it possible that I am here? Like, of all the kids that were put up for adoption, how is it that I was chosen by my parents? And I think it has a lot to do with how they were raised, which is a result of what makes me who I am and the values they instilled in me. And I think all of that goes back to my grandparents. And so I don't think like I would be sitting on this couch with you if it weren't for them, because they raised two individuals who were, and I said this earlier, who chose to love the child of another woman. And a child that does not share blood with them, but like, I know I am loved as if I do share the same blood as my parents. And since the passing of my grandmother a few years ago, and since the recent passing of my grandfather, I have wanted nothing more than to be able to say to them, like, thank you. And thank you for giving me my parents, because I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be where I am without them.
That was really good. Isabella, the final question.
Okay.
Would you care to share a word before we leave?
I would. I would love to tell people, and again, I said this earlier, you can't help but love someone once you know their story. And I think right now we live in such a polarizing world for so many different reasons. And I think as humanity goes on and like as the world goes on, not everyone, but a lot of us have lost how to make those meaningful connections, how to just stop and be present in the moment with each other, even if, there are differences between us. I think everyone has a story. I mean, you were telling me the reason why you created this podcast is because everyone has a story to tell. Yeah. And I think when you take the time to truly get to know someone for who they are and what makes them, that way, it's such a beautiful thing. And I think I personally just want to create more unity than, polarizing moments between people. I want to give the chance to make meaningful connections with people on a day-to-day basis.
You're doing just that. Well, everybody, this has been A Word Before We Leave. We are coming from you from Isabella's patio in Los Angeles, California. Isabella, talk about the charity one more time.
Yes, my favorite thing to talk about. So in a few weeks, 2 weeks, I'll be flying to Guatemala, and on December 26th, we will be hosting our big community event in Guatemala in the village. And so there's still time to donate. Like I said, $1 or $100 goes such a long way and will truly make such a big impact. And even if you can't donate, you can share my fundraiser with someone, send the link to someone, share, my story with someone. And then that really creates such a big ripple effect for sure.
There is so much you can do in small ways, and it doesn't require money.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing goes for this podcast episode. Every link that you're going to need is going to be in the description for every source, whether that's broadcasted through Spotify or through YouTube. I will make sure that there is an easy, accessible way for you guys to access the fundraiser. If you guys like this episode, please follow the show, rate it on Spotify. There's a little star button under the follow button, and the more ratings we get and the more follows we get, the more people naturally will find the show without us marketing to them. If you guys are watching this through YouTube, subscribe, like, comment. The algorithm pushes it. I don't know why the internet has built like this, but it's just the way it is. The more you interact with us online, the more people get to see this, and the more people that see this get to support the fundraiser, and that's extremely important. That's bigger than the show. Okay, let's let these Mayans have a great Christmas. But other than that, I'm Brett Gaffney. This is
Isabella Andreoni.
And you just watched or listened to A Word Before We Leave. A quick thank you to Louis Llewellyn for helping out with camera work on the last episode, Diego Astorga for supplying the Blackmagic camera filming the wide. I want to say thank you to Isabella for letting me be here, Lizzie Bromley for inspiring the episode. Thank you to Emily Shakai because, well, you know, you're Emily. We love you. I want to say thank you to Isabella's boyfriend. I want to say thank you to Isabella's family for allowing me to interview a lovely person, and to you, the listener, thank you for joining us once again. All I have to do is close a door. That's it. I'm gonna just slide that door shut off camera if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Gotta let it go. It's all about the sound.
There we go. Great. Okay, I hope that was okay. I got really nervous.
No.
I didn't make sense.
Absolutely amazing.
Okay.
I was extremely happy with that.